It's February 3rd, 2013. You're listening to the special Thunder Show edition of You Kids Today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to You Kids Today. This is episode number 4, and I call it the Thunder Show edition because today's guest, I'm really excited to have him here, is Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk is an amazing guy. You may know him from the Wine Library TV video podcast. He was a guy that started this podcast back in 2006. We'll get into that a little bit on the interview portion of the show. But if you've ever seen a keynote that this guy's given, he is one of these guys that has taken social media and just grabbed it around the neck and made it his own. And he's an amazing, very inspirational speaker when he talks about what he does for his company and how he works with brands and how he gets people involved in social media and uses it to just get out there and get in people's face and get them excited about your product or your brand. He is the master at that. And you really should check out the show notes. I'm going to put several links to things in the show notes where you can see some of his keynotes. Take the time and watch a few of those. And if you're doing anything that requires social media or want to get into social media with your company or your brand, you're going to learn an awful lot in the investment of time it takes to watch that video. So I highly recommend you check that out. So before we get into the interview segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about what today is. Today is Super Bowl Sunday. And for many people, that means getting your friends together and watching the game on TV and cheering for your team and also watching those amazing commercials that people have spent millions and millions of dollars to put in front of you. I don't have the ability to watch the Super Bowl here at my apartment because I don't have cable or satellite television here. I don't watch live TV that much. And what was kind of interesting about that is year before last, I did kind of an audit of my television watching experience and realized I was paying $185 a month for what amounted to, after I did the audit, it amounted to about 35 to 45 minutes of watching per month. I watched that much of the broadcast television signal per month, and it just was not worth it to me. So I spent most of my time watching things on Apple TV or playing on my Xbox or watching, Blu-rays in my PlayStation or, watching Netflix or Hulu or something like that. I spent a lot more time watching stuff over the internet than I did watching broadcast television. So I got rid of it. I said, take it away. Of course, calling Time Warner and saying, take it away, you get the whole script where they beg you, please don't do it. Come back. We'll make it cheaper. We'll do whatever. It's like, no, it's just not worth it. I don't care how much cheaper you make it. I don't watch it. So unless you make it free, get it out of here. So I'm not going to look at it. And so got rid of it, and I really haven't missed it. I don't follow sports, so I don't really miss that. I don't watch live news because I have something called the internet, and I pretty much get live news through Twitter feeds and looking at news sites and things like that. So I don't really feel like I'm missing out on much. Every once in a while, you'll get something like the Academy Awards or the Super Bowl, and even then I can follow a Twitter feed or follow stuff on the internet and just get the general buzz of what's going on. But if you've really watched the Academy Awards, it's pretty boring. I mean, no one wants to hear those speeches and stuff like that. It's like, just who wins what and give me the list at the end of it. I don't need to see all that junk. So that said, I haven't really missed anything. And, people tell me like, oh, how are you going to watch things like the Rose Bowl parade? And I'm like, I don't. I think that's boring. I've actually been to the Rose Bowl, froze my butt off, and thought it was the most boring thing I've ever seen. So, no, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. And, I feel perfectly fine for having done that. So now my internet bill is a whopping $60 a month, and that's all I pay Time Warner for is just the internet. And so I'm excited to hear about things such as Apple TV. There's a lot of rumors this year about Apple TV, finally going to kick into sort of the next generation of what they're, planning to do to compete with cable and satellite, which, they've been rumored for years to say, okay, they've got an offering that they're going to compete with, the big broadcasting companies. And I was pleased to hear that HBO Go, Apple's in talks with HBO apparently to include HBO Go on the Apple TV, which is great. Because I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, and I've said this on Facebook before as well. It's like Game of Thrones, I'm more than happy to pay what Apple calls a season pass, where I buy for $35 or whatever, access to every episode of a series, episode by episode. And by the end of that season, I've already watched all the episodes in high def, but you pay about $35 for that, and they call it a season pass. Well, HBO doesn't do that on Apple TV for some of its shows because they've got exclusives that they've signed into for the cable and satellite companies. And so that's why there's a thing called BitTorrent. And sorry, but unless you're competing in that space, I'm a cord cutter. I don't have a cable or a satellite television provider in order to get HBO, but I'm more than happy. My credit card is out right now, ready to swipe. Come take my money. And if you don't take it, I'll get the programming one way or another. And that's just the way it is. And there's, I keep hearing like, well, I don't represent a big enough market to really make it worth their while. And I'm like, well, then great. Don't bitch about losing money to BitTorrent, because that's where I'm going to get the shows. And they're all there. They're in high definition. It's a pain in the ass to get them, but I get them. And that's the way it's going to be until, and I hope HBO puts HBO Go on Apple TV. I will be right there day one with my credit card buying that service because I think it'll be worth it. It's so much easier to just one-click purchase than do BitTorrent. But if you leave me no option and you're not there competing in the space, if you don't compete, you can't complain. So there's that. Anyway, enough of my ranting on cutting the cord there. I highly recommend it, by the way. If you're not into sports and you don't watch a lot of live news, look into that. Just price it out and see how much money you could save. I cut 2/3 of the bill that I pay every month to Time Warner. I cut 2/3 of it off. So that worked for me. It might work for you. So let's move on to the interview portion of the show. I got to speak with Gary for about 15 minutes today, and we used Google Voice because Gary was on a cell phone or something like that, and he's on the road and he's doing a zillion things at once. So, this is the best way for him to get a hold of me here. So we talked over Google Voice. I was able to record the call using Google Voice. That's one of the features that Google doesn't really talk about much, but you can actually record an incoming call if you route it through Google Voice. So the quality's not so bad, but it's not as good as obviously the broadcast microphone I'm speaking into now. But I think the quality of Gary's responses in the interview itself speak for itself. Gary's an amazing guy. I'm really looking forward to having you listen to this interview. So let's get right to it.
So my guest today is Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary's the CEO of VaynerMedia, his brand consulting firm that he's set up with his brother. And he's an expert in digital marketing, social media, and customer relations. Gary, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's thrilled to be here.
So, Gary, I want to take you back to 2006. February 2006, New Jersey. You're on your way to your family's wine shop, and you make a detour, and you pick up a video camera that day. And what happened next, literally and figuratively, changed the wine world forever. You started Wine Library TV, and what was interesting about that to me, and why I wanted to ask you about that, is if I was a brand consultant or if I talked to a brand consultant in 2006, they would have probably told a wine shop owner to do an email list and score the wines and grow your business that way. But you had a completely different idea for that. Could you tell me what your inspiration was that day?
I can, and thanks for asking. February 20th, 2006. I'll never forget the date. I love marketing in the present instead of the past. And so you're absolutely right. People would have brought up email and things of that nature. About a year earlier, YouTube launched in 2005, and there was 2 video blogs that I caught in the summer of 2005. One was called Rocket Boom, and one was called They Frank the Show. They were really the only 2 video blogs that were making noise in that summer. And between those 2 shows at YouTube and the fact that my developers at WineLibrary.com were obsessed with those shows, and all of us were obsessed with what was happening on YouTube, it kind of just became obvious to me that video online had arrived, and that, I didn't really know that I would do well on video, but that it gave me the inspiration to do a wine show on YouTube, and that really was it. It just was very obvious to me that 2006 and beyond would be the year of video. Then I thought communicating through YouTube was something I could conceivably do, that there was a huge void in the wine world talking about wine, and that's basically what I started.
Interesting. So, and also you would think that the typical audience for Wine Library or a wine shop would not necessarily be into video blogs, but it seemed like you were going after a different segment of the population at that point. Was that what your intent was, or did you just, really
I
just
kind of felt,
yeah,
and you're right. I mean, I kind of felt like they would come, and I didn't mind putting in the year or two of work. And I thought I'd pick up some new people. So, yeah, it was a combination of two. I thought I could create wine drinkers, which is what I did, from people that were into tech and gadgets, because that was really the only people watching video blogs at that point, really the technology sector. And I thought that, in 2008, 9, 10, they would come and that people would watch at scale. And so, kind of, I was right about both in some way.
Fantastic. And 1,000 episodes later, an amazing run of that show. I was a big fan of that when you were running that. So let's talk about today a little bit. So now, it's Super Bowl Sundays tomorrow. We're probably going to see hashtags, Twitter handles, Facebook addresses, and things at the end of every single commercial during the Super Bowl. So social media is definitely here in a big way, and brands are starting, especially big brands, are starting to really, have a real social media strategy. But the biggest challenge I'm seeing brands having is what you really strive to do, which is to have that interactive one-on-one relationship with every single customer. For a brand to do that, like a Coca-Cola or somebody like that, to do that at scale is incredibly difficult. What do you recommend for brands that want to have these intimate relationships with their customers at scale in a cost-effective way?
Well, they're going to have to make the mental decision to take dollars away from what they call working media and put it into non-working media, which is really sacrilege to a lot of people. And for the people that are listening now, let me explain. Working media is media that they are buying, so the airtime on radio, on television, outdoor media, banner ads. That's the working media. Dollars you pay media companies to rent from them their commercial space. Non-working media is actually what VaynerMedia does and other companies and creative companies do, which is actually produce the billboard, produce the commercial, produce the banner ad. And in the ad world and in the big brand, the CPG world especially, the non-working stuff is frowned upon because it's to produce it, not necessarily to distribute it. And distributing it is far more attractive to them. I think what they need to start thinking about is the fact that they've been renting for years. And so they rent this attention when they're on a banner ad or a commercial. You only have a moment in time. I think what social networks are providing them is a chance to have a place to communicate with their consumers on a daily basis and own the relationship. And so to me, I think this is a really interesting point, a really, fascinating argument. I think for them to do it at scale, they've got to take some of the working media dollars, which I think are being spent in a silly way, on banner ads and other things of that nature, and instead of putting it into that, putting it into hiring community managers and people that can actually engage with customers at scale. And so whether that's internal or external, communicating with the consumer at scale really matters. It creates context and relationship, and I think it hits the emotional center, which eventually then hits the wallet of people much more than a commercial. And so that's what I think.
I agree, and when I advise companies as well, when they say, okay, yeah, my social media department is this intern that sits over here that I have no idea what they do, I get really nervous about that, and say you have to take this very seriously. This is the first line of contact with many of your customers. I'm really inspired by what Scott Monte's doing at Ford, for example, is he has become an excellent spokesperson for that company and has really inspired a lot of activity in social media.
A lot of goodwill and a lot of young people that think Ford is relevant. And so do they think it's relevant because of a lot of the social engagement, or do they think it's relevant because of the product placement in American Idol? I can tell you right now, I think it's the former more than the latter, and I can tell you right now they spend a hell of a lot more money on the latter than they do on the former.
Yeah, and it's good to see it starting to come around. I'll be curious to see what kind of commercials air during the Super Bowl as well, to kind of, see what people are doing, if they're just sticking a hashtag at the end of their commercial or if they're really putting a call to action out there. What would you recommend if you had a Super Bowl commercial? What would you put on your commercial to kickstart a social media campaign?
I would make the entire commercial a call to action. Really, I would. Not in a cheesy way like GoDaddy does, but something where, you literally have somebody speaking directly to the audience saying, go to this site right now. The first 100,000 people that do this, X, Y, and Z. I think there's a way to be very creative where you can create a lot of content. Maybe everybody take a picture of this right now and post it on Facebook with hashtag this. And so, To be honest with you, I think that the reason I can't give you a definitive answer of what I would do is I really need to understand what they need to be doing or what they're trying to accomplish. But the opportunity is clearly there.
Sure. It's got to be more than just a stunt. It's got to have an actual, point to it, and not just, get the headline for the day of, I did this particular stunt, but, I turned it into a relationship that I can actually monetize at some point in the future.
Agreed.
So let me do a fun forward-looking question for you here. You have stated up front, and you're laser focused on this, one day you're going to own the New York Jets franchise. Mm-hmm. And based on your past success and experience in marketing, social media, customer relations, let's say, okay, Gary Vaynerchuk, you have just signed the deal. You now are the owner, lock, stock, and barrel of the New York Jets. Mm-hmm. What would you change in that particular organization and take advantage of those particular areas, marketing, social media, customer relations, and transform that franchise and the NFL using your expertise?
So the first thing, even though I'm lucky enough to have the NFL and the Jets as both clients of VaynerMedia, I don't know every rule of what I can and can't do, but I can give you a series of things that I know I would do. Number one, I would at first, no question about it, especially based on my DNA, become the most touchable and most engaged owner in sports. I would probably host some sort of, this is now making pretend that I did it today instead of like predicting what technology is going to do in the future. I would definitely 100% do a weekly 1 to 2, maybe 3-hour Q&A show and be as transparent with my fan base as possible. I think that there's a lot of validity to that. I would encourage my players to do the same at scale. I would story tell about all 53 men on the roster, not just the quarterback or the star. So I'd put out content on the punter. I'd almost do my own micro content version of Hard Knocks, right? I'd get the fans to care more about the players than they normally do. So, and some players are introverted and their agents wouldn't want that. So you take the ones that do and want to. Obviously, everybody wants to when you're winning. Nobody wants to when you're losing. I would really focus on the youth. Obviously, I'm in New York, so I'm competing against the Giants. So I'd really try to, get to the kids at a young age. So I do a lot of things around 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, try to make them Jet fans. I think that'd be healthy. I would do a lot of stuff pregame. I think one of the biggest problems with the Jets is their fans are not in their seats for kickoff. So I would think a lot about how to create that and how to get them in their seats for the kickoff. I'd focus on that. I'd focus on tailgate culture. I think people really care about that. I'd also be very aggressive against the New York media. I think New York media has Giants bias. And I would put that out there and be as aggressive against my beat writers and ESPN and everybody else as they are against me. That would be a very big focus of mine, to have a real relationship, an authentic one with the media. So those would be some of the things I definitely would do.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that day. I think that'll be a really interesting, a really fun game to watch. And because you're so involved with it, it would be, very, rewarding for every single fan, whether they're on TV or in the stadium. I think that would be a really good way of pulling that off. So, Gary, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today. I really appreciate it. This has been part of Gary's One Interview a Day series, where you're doing one interview a day for every single day of 2013, right?
That's right. I felt like I was a little disconnected from my community. I wanted to give back a little bit. I'm flattered that I'm in a position where people care enough about me that they're going to visit all these different blogs and podcasts. And I thought it was a great way for me to give back to all the people that have been following me and caring about me, and it means a lot to me. And so I appreciate your interest.
Thank you, Gary. It means a lot to us, too. And thank you for being such an inspiration to me personally to put this show out, as well as a lot of other things I do in my professional career. So thank you again for being on the show today.
Thanks so much, Kyle. Have a great day.
So that was Gary Vaynerchuk. I highly urge you to go check out the show notes at youkidstoday.com. I'll have links to all of Gary's books and links to some of his keynote speeches and his VaynerMedia.com page, where if you've got a company and you need some brand consultation, that's a good guy to talk to. He is an expert at this sort of thing. And he's always got great ideas, and he's always ahead of the game. So if you're in the market for that sort of thing, you should give Gary a call, definitely. And VaynerMedia would help you out immensely. And that's it for this episode of You Kids Today. If you like the show, tell a friend. That would be the best thing to do. I want to get as many people as possible listening to the show. I really want to hear some of your comments and your feedback, so please come to youkidstoday.com. There's several means of you being able to interact with the show. You could send a voicemail in. It doesn't cost anything. You do it right there off your laptop, and it's easy to do. You can comment on any of the podcast episodes or the blog posts. You can send me a tweet at YouKidsToday. You can hit us up on Facebook. We're all over the social media side of things. And please let us know what you think of the show. Let me know if you've got any requests for future guests. And we'll see you next time on You Kids Today. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good week.